I've done this for this will be about the third or fourth year that we've done this as far as our January topic. Two key things I always take away. I think usually my bad news is always the Jetpacks haven't come yet, because I'm still waiting for the Jetpacks. XP is finally going away. We're going to talk about why that actually matters, because it actually does. But the other thing is, and this is part of, we'll talk about ransomware, the bad guys have figured out a business model. And this scares the bejeebers out of me, all right? And those of you who know, I don't raise we have to be scared and all that flag too terribly often, but this one actually is pretty serious. Well, one of the things that's really happening now as far as companies go is the hybrid model. And what is the hybrid model? The hybrid model is really, it's these four issues. If you think about those four scenarios, those four situations, companies have to make the decision as to whether or not to allow their people to do their jobs in these scenarios. Every one of them adds to the freedom of the employees to be able to be more flexible as far as how they do their jobs. Every one of them also adds more problems as far as security goes. And notice, this is not a technical question. This is a business question. Do we need our people to be able to act in these four situations? And are we willing to make an investment so that they can act securely and appropriately? The device internet. How many of you have cars that are reporting information? A lot more of you than raised your hands. Toilets are on the internet. Okay? Nest Labs was just purchased by Google for $3.2 billion cash. They make thermostats. But what's happening is these are devices that can be on your network that provide active information about the behavior of the user to the mothership, whoever the mothership is. Cars. More and more issues are going to come up as far as, progressive with their devices that you can hook in, which will actually track and keep an idea of what your driving habits are. Well, initially, that's going to be also that they can judge how good or poor of a risk you are in terms of insurance. But if you're Pizza Hut and you could essentially send advertisements over a radio, especially like a satellite radio or some kind of radio, when the person is driving near a Pizza Hut, wouldn't that be kind of cool? Especially if they had the health function or health that I do. So from an IT standpoint, you're going to see the number of devices on networks proliferate dramatically.
IPv6. Bob mentions this whole explosion of devices. Well, that's great. Well, now we have to identify all these devices. Everyone here basically has a phone number associated with them. So our office number 234-380-1277. It's one number for us. Well, Bob also has his own cell phone number. Well, now he has two numbers. He has a house phone. There's his third number. For one person, that consumed 3 phone numbers. And if any of you have lived in this area since 1997, you know what happened then. We added 330 and 440 area codes in addition to the 216. IPs, all these devices that we're adding, the cell phones, the computers, the tablets, the toilets, they all consume an address. Unfortunately, the way the internet was initially designed, there is only so many addresses. It comes out to 2 to the 32nd power. That's
more than 40.
Yeah, more than 40. I don't remember the number off the top of my head. Well, we're running out of those numbers. The last number I saw was the last big block of those numbers that we're allowed to allocate to devices runs out in February of next year. So what does that actually mean? That means you can't access stuff anymore unless you use IPv6. IPv6 is a new way of addressing things, and the number of addresses it uses is huge. It's 2 to the 128th power. The way I can show you how to do that. So make a little square about 1.6 inches across. Say there was a little dot in there that contained every single IPv4 address. Okay, now let's put that inside of the box for an IPv6, the total number of addresses you can do there. Well, unfortunately, I can't bring my arms big enough out. The number of addresses, I would have to extend my hands out to about the orbit of Pluto. So there's a couple addresses.
Not a planet, but still, it's impressive.
Planetoid. So the amount of addresses you can use is huge. So this is definitely something that people need to more actively work towards implementing. And it goes to the third point, what you need to do. It's really not that difficult to enable yourself for at least basic IPv6 connectivity.
Part of the challenge is going to be that in some cases, your ISP, the company that you're using to connect your organization to the internet, some of the ISPs don't actually support IPv6 yet. Okay?
A lot of them don't.
A lot of them don't. Or if they do, they hide it from you because it increases their problems as far as maintaining you somewhat if they're not ready. In terms of a small to medium organization, talk to somebody who knows about this stuff. Okay? And preferably before you get hit by something, by the problem. But as long as you take a look at it ahead of time, it's simple. It's similar. It should be a gradual cutover. All right. If you're a larger organization, okay, this should be a strategy that you're looking at now. For years, we've been doing this BYOD, bring your own device, or bring the device we give you. Okay. Here's the challenge. And I've said this before, 10 years ago, IT managers, myself included, somebody bringing their own device from home, it was no big deal. We had a very simple answer. No, you can't use it. Because that device, be it a Palm Pilot or be it another PC, it didn't add value to that person doing their job that we couldn't, by just getting them another computer, we couldn't reproduce. They didn't have the remote connectivity, the cloud-based capabilities, all that kind of stuff. So companies really didn't have to take that extra step. Flash forward to today, oh God. Well, actually, flash forward to 2 years ago, where we had these iPads, these the initial Android tablets, all of these things that, from an IT perspective, we couldn't control. We couldn't manage, we couldn't monitor, we had no idea whether they're being used properly or improperly. But we couldn't argue with the fact that a person bringing them into the office, it increased their productivity. So the BYOD happened. And if management looked at it and go, okay, our sales force can be on the road, they can access documents, they can do work, all that kind of fun stuff. They're increasing their productivity by 20% by having these devices. And I've got these geeks over in IT who are crying because they can't control things. Gee, who am I going to give more importance to? I'm going to give it to the guys who are increasing their productivity. The 3 BYODs, scenarios, and there's derivatives of different versions of this. So we have an employee who has a device, and with this device they are able to access company information, company resources, whether its data is actually stored on the device or they can connect remotely or the like. Really, they fall under 2 questions. One is the person lost access to the device. Whether they lose the device is destroyed, someone steals the device, whatever. And the second one is it turns out the person is a bad player. They just went to the competition or the like. Those are 2 conversations that you should have, if you're talking about from an IT perspective, you should try to have with management as far as how they want to protect against those scenarios. Okay? Because reacting to those scenarios without having that discussion means, hey, you only have so many options. So, what happens when an employee loses the device? Well, if we've taken if we've taken the steps ahead of time to make it so that there are multiple levels of using the device, whether it be thumbprint reader or using some kind of encryption tool with an encryption key or whatever, so you can't just open it up or pop out the hard drive, we're in pretty good shape. If we've made it so that we can remote wipe the device so that we can actually have it automatic the next time it connects to the network, to the internet, it'll automatically wipe it, we're in not the greatest, but we're in okay-ish. If we've just really kind of just hoping that nobody bad gets it, because that would be wrong, we're not in that great shape. And again, I want to stress, this is not a technical question. This is a business question. The solutions, the budget, the implementation, the maintenance, those are technical. And this is one of the things that as IT people, we do a lousy job at. Because in a lot of cases, we'll take it upon ourselves, well, this is the way I always thought it should be. Well, great, as soon as you own the company, you can make that decision. The second issue is we have a bad actor. We have an employee that's either being let go, in which case we can be preemptive, or they're going to leave, in which case we have to be reactive. If we have an employee, especially the salesperson who has the list of customers and contacts and all that kind of thing, if that person is leaving and going to the competition, we'd rather not have him take the laptop with him or the data. Now, I want to be real clear here from a reality check. If you have a salesperson, and that salesperson is going to the competition, and they tell you on Tuesday, Monday they got the data out. Okay? They've already gotten it. That said, you need to have, again, that conversation. What do we want to do when we have an employee? And as we get more and more into this hybrid model, because this is a big push the companies are doing, we have to have an idea. And again, an employee wants to let other people access to the data. I'm just using the kids as an example. It could be anything. As a BYOD, as an IT management, the tools are getting better. We have more options as far as how to control and manage this stuff. And you're going to see a lot more control being implemented, I think, over the next year. As I kind of talked about the toilets, because I like talking about toilets, the other thing I wanted to talk about is how many of you have a flashlight app on your phone? And how many of you had to give it access to your location and other stuff in order to run a flashlight app? Because, when you're running an app that makes the light shine brighter, it needs to know where you are geographically. That's critical in order for the application to work. It's pulling data from your phone and sharing it. Okay? 3/4 of, and flashlight apps are like the poster child. 3/4 of flashlight apps are spyware. They gather information about your device usage and share it to somebody who's then going to resell it. When you get an application and it says, hey, in order to run this app, I need to be able to do the following. If that following has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the app, that's why they wrote it. Okay? But any of these devices, in order to work, have to have some level of service application. And the service application goes to the consumer. The consumer then basically says, yes, I'd like you to turn green or I'd like you to turn red. I'd like you to go left or right. I'd like you to warmer or colder. And that is then shared to the mothership, theoretically to improve their quality of service, but also so that they can focus, whether it be focus marketing resources, focusing other resources, so they know more about you. That is going to get so... You guys ever seen Minority Report, the movie? Yeah. Where you see the characters, and I thought it was a silly movie for the most part, but one of the things is as the characters were walking around, ads were popping up. You're going to see that. You're already seeing that now for your browsing. You browse to a website that has absolutely nothing to do with things that you normally look for, but the things you normally look for are the ads that are popping up in the browser. Why? Because they're tracking you. They already know what you're doing, what you like, and all that. Yeah. Now, here's the issue. Here's the challenge. We were talking about this recently. I'm a business owner. I want to do business with almost everyone in this room. But, and so, what do? We send out postcards to about 200, 300 people a month. We send out emails to about 2,600 people a month, the newsletter and the like. We send letters to companies. Why? Because we want you to open them, to pay attention to them, to contact us. So we're on the other side of that coin from a business standpoint. So from a business owner standpoint, wanting to connect to potential customers, I'm like, oh goody, if someone did a search for how do I recover my crashed network, I want them to see an ad from Simplex-IT, because that's good marketing, yay. Then I take that hat off and put my consumer hat on. I don't want to receive all this stuff. I don't want to be bombarded. So the problem is that, and at the same time, and then we take it to the general consumer, I want all these free services. I want to get all these free things to work for me. And when I talk to a company, I want them to know what I expect from them. So we have these three dilemmas which essentially, if any of us nudge outside of what we want, we annoy the heck out of the other players. Cryptolocker. Usually it's pushed by social media. Someone opens a email that says, hey, there's a UPS delivery that's late, click here, do whatever. If it's not blocked and it is run, what this puppy will do is essentially encrypt all the data that it can connect to. Whether it's local on your computer, on your network, if you're mapping drives in your cloud storage, it will encrypt it. It will also get rid of all the VSS history images. And it will encrypt it with a strong encryption key that no one has figured out how to break. If your backups are attached as map devices and can get to it, it'll encrypt your backups too. So your data, your backups, everything is encrypted. And for all purposes, it's not recoverable. Okay? It'll then start, I think, a 72-hour countdown where if you go to this website and basically put in untraceable money, and it starts at like $100 to $300, whatever, it will then give you the key to unencrypt your data and save your data. They have websites that are aimed at helping. So they have a call center, so if you're having trouble paying the ransom, you can call for help. This is a business, okay? And for the first time, these guys are making money. Not this, we just held you for ransom for $10,000. No, $100 here, a couple $100 there, all that kind of thing. And it's a business model, and it works. This is, in my opinion, this is why XP scares me. And we'll talk about that in a second. But this is one of those ones where the bad guys have found a way. They're not charging so much. They're charging just enough so that it's so much easier just to pay the ransom. April 8th, 2014, XP and Office 2003 are officially not supported anymore, which means April 9th, blue screen of death across the country. No. What it actually means is that the stuff will continue to work. There will be no change whatsoever to the code. None, under any circumstance. Now, when you take a look at security, and this is a little bit on the simplistic side, but there's really three pieces of it. And as soon as we start including firewalls and routers and all that, this is really kind of summed up over here. But first of all, we have antivirus software. That's software that actively looks at things that are being brought into your system or things that are already on your system and takes a look at the files and says, is there anything that looks bad here? And if there is, I'm going to block it. I'm going to quarantine it. And antivirus software gets updated as soon as the antivirus software company knows that there's a threat that's out there. So it gets updated constantly. User behavior is a big part of this, and especially in the Cryptolocker and the newer stuff. If users are going to say, why, yes, install it. Why, yes, download it. Why, yes, I'd like that. Our ability to manage on these two sides becomes significantly less. Now, what we can do, and this is especially true with Windows 7 and Windows 8, is remove the administrative rights. And we're doing this. We remove the administrative rights from the local user so they couldn't install something if they wanted to. But some of this stuff actually has ways to get around that. So, user behavior, and then the third is security patching. A lot of viruses are actually not protected. You're not protected against a lot of viruses by antivirus software. You're protected against it by the patch that Microsoft released. Because in a lot of cases, viruses, and by viruses I mean malware, any of this sort of stuff, actually exploits a weakness that's discovered in the operating system or the application. So what happens is Microsoft puts out patches that fixes and closes these holes, security patches. That's stopping. So if we look at this as the three sides of our protection and our security, we're losing this for XP. So if somebody finds a security opening that they can take advantage of on XP, Microsoft will immediately leap into action and say nothing and do nothing. They will not close that loophole. But on one side of the fence, we have the bad guys have finally figured out a way to get money out of us on a regular basis and make it pay. And we also know that Microsoft is not going to support and come up with fixes to these issues. And the antivirus vendors are going to be less and less interested in supporting the OS. You put all those together, it's not going to be, oh, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a question of when and how fast. Another issue, platform neutral. We're seeing this more and more. So if I have a commercial website, that site needs to be able to be resolved to somebody who has a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a phone, regardless of whose phone it is. And, used to be we just had to worry about whether it's Chrome or Internet Explorer. And the total definition of how you use real estate on this device versus this device is hugely different. Storage, it's everywhere. Why? Storage is cheap. Storage is absolutely cheap. Now, what's not cheap is transferring it back and forth. We still have the issues of transmission speed, uploading and downloading and all that kind of thing, but the actual storage itself is becoming more and more cheap. One of the things we do for a number of companies is we actually do cloud-based storage. So the cloud-based storage is essentially we take the backups, we take the full backups, we put it up to the cloud, and then we do incremental backups, and that we just transmit, we upload to the cloud because the incrementals are much smaller. And that was great, because that way if an entire site went out and offline, we could overnight that information and have it sent to us. And the challenge, though, was that what if somebody wanted to actually start their server up in the cloud, so actually remotely start their server? And the problem was with that was that companies who do that, you paid a pretty penny, a premium, in order to be able to do that. So essentially we have this emergency server that's up in the cloud, using like a Rackspace, Amazon, or Azure for Microsoft. But we're paying to have it always there, and the only time we would need it is in case of an emergency. The solution that we use is a company called Amazon, or not Amazon, a company called eFolder. Starts with a vowel. What they just introduced is a way where you can use their traditional storage, and within a 30-minute period, they will actually migrate the data to a place that can be virtualized. So we can actually take that cloud backup and virtualize the server with VPN and firewall connections. And aside from the booting the server, it takes about 30 minutes. Desktop and laptops, again, doesn't please Microsoft. The whole idea that people are buying fewer and fewer of those, they're becoming less and less critical as far as our decision, as far as which IT devices and all that kind of thing. Business continuity. There is no excuse for a company not to have some form of business continuity. At this point in time, the solutions for business continuity are just out there. They are not that expensive. They are reasonable, and they are easy to test. IT, in terms of making sure the stuff just runs and runs on time, that should not be an issue anymore. It should. It should just run. It may not run as fast or as efficient or as effectively, and it may not be as paralleled with the business needs as possible. That's where the value comes in, especially if we're talking to IT consulting companies. If your consulting is focused strictly on the trains running on time, you can be outsourced. You can be outsourced overseas in a minute if you don't add value to the business. Actually, how many of you saw our presentation on Google Glass? Okay, cool. The key thing I want to point out is this is a revolutionarily, it's a completely different way of applying information to and from the individual. Okay, that's the key thing. And as far as how the service is delivered, and so we've been stuck for a long time in these desktops and laptops, which the only difference between the two is one is lighter and can be moved around. Otherwise, they're the same. Then we got these smartphones. Then we got these tablets, but there really wasn't a lot different. To a degree with the mobile devices, yeah, I'll give it, but otherwise, this thing is very different. Okay? The delivery, and especially the way Google is manufacturing this as a service. So I think you're going to see an extremely different delivery on that. Another is on the PC side. Wait for it. This is a PC. It's a full-blown, what's it, i5? i3. That's an i3 processor. You can get it with an i5, though, I think. i7? It's got an SSD drive. I think it goes up to 8 gig of RAM. I mean, this is a full PC. It's got network connection. You can get it with a wireless HDMI connectors, a couple USB ports. You just plug it into a power supply. It doesn't cost much more than a regular PC. Okay? But ridiculously small form factor. So you've got this. You've got the whole thing with the Google Glass going on. You've got another thing. It's a virtual keyboard. Okay, what this does is it actually projects a keyboard, and it's a USB keyboard, and if I hit the keys, it registers on the device. So I can actually use this as a keyboard on a table. And whatever device it's connected to can use it. The reason I bring this up is because these are truly revolutionary different ways of a user to interact with the computers. And you ain't seen nothing yet. This stuff is going to continue to go out and to continue to move forward.
So who here knows who Elon Musk is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, he's one of the founders of PayPal, and he also he runs SpaceX, which is the private space company, and Tesla Motors, on which I don't know if many of you know who that is.
We can't afford him.
He's a businessman, but he's also an engineer. He took Leap Motion and said they want to use it to engineer their motors for the rockets. So
Design.
So you guys have seen Iron Man, the new Iron Man movies where he's moving stuff around on the screens, waving his arms in the air. Elon Musk took that concept using Leap Motion and built a CAD system to manipulate motors and machine parts with that little tiny motion control system.
To give you an idea of what we're talking about, if you think about Kinect or the Wii, well, Kinect is a better example. It actually would recognize limb motion. So it would recognize the trunk, the head, the arms, and the legs. Leap takes that a step further. Leap actually has sensors. It can actually get down to the joints of your fingers. So it can actually recognize what you're doing. So think about this for a second. We've got this device which is projecting up on a screen that nobody else can see what I'm actually seeing. We've got this which can project a virtual keyboard. We've got these Leap devices or concepts which can actually interpret the motions down to the finger. Why do I need a traditional keyboard, mouse, or even screen? So we're getting to the point where a person will be able to now, if you don't see what that person's seeing, it's going to look pretty bizarre. You know, but we've already seen that by watching someone have an argument where they've got a Bluetooth device and you don't see it, and they're walking down the street. I don't.
Coppedge, everybody.